Episode 4. Arriving at the market, Young-bun opened the shop door and went in. While organizing the counter drawer, she found a bundle of old documents. They were rental receipts. Underneath was a rusty safe key. Young-bun picked up the key. It was rusty but still heavy. She remembered what this key opened: an old safe in the storeroom behind the market. It contained things she had saved all her life. Young-bun put the key back in the drawer. She didn't have the heart to open it now. Instead, she picked up her knife and started working again. As she cleaned the hair tail, she thought, "So my life has been with this fishy smell, and I raised a son who is ashamed of it." Her fingertip bled. She had cut herself without even noticing while working. Only then did she realize. Young-bun sucked the wound and sighed. She felt unusually tired today. The next day, Friday, Young-bun woke up an hour earlier than usual. It was 3 a.m. She hadn't slept well, and her eyes were puffy. Washing her face with cold water didn't clear her muddled head. Arriving at the shop, Young-bun sat in the dark without turning on the lights. She had agonized all night about whether to help Dawoon or not, but found no answer. A week felt pressingly short. As the sun began to rise, Young-bun slowly started working. She sharpened the knife, wiped the cutting board, and prepared the ice. But her movements were clumsier than usual. Her heart was heavy. Around 8 a.m., Dawoon came to the shop with his resignation documents. He was wearing a suit, but his tie was loose, and his face looked more haggard than just a day before. "Mom, the company asked me to resign voluntarily. At least they won't press criminal charges, but on the condition that I repay the money within a week." Young-bun stopped cleaning the fish and looked at Dawoon. Dark circles were heavily under his son's eyes. He clearly hadn't slept for days. "Does Mi-ju know?" Dawoon shook his head. "I haven't told her yet. She's happy her YouTube is doing well. How can I tell her?" Young-bun put down the knife and wiped her hands on her apron. The fishy smell was strong, but this time Dawoon didn't wrinkle his nose. No, he didn't even seem to have the luxury for that. "Mom, please help me just this once. If I get back on my feet, I'll repay you double." Dawoon's voice was full of desperation. But Young-bun's heart was complicated. She couldn't readily give her life savings to a son who was ashamed of her life. "I earned it even with these fishy hands. I never lived relying on others." Young-bun's voice was firm. Dawoon's face contorted. Something flashed in his eyes. Whether anger or despair, it was hard to tell. "I was embarrassed by that smell my whole life. Do you know how much I was teased by friends at school? Because of the fishy smell from Mom's hands." Dawoon's voice rose, echoing inside the shop. Young-bun said nothing and started cleaning the fish again, picking up her knife. Tap, 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 tap. Only the sound of the knife echoed. Dawoon's words stabbed Young-bun's heart, sharper than the knife's edge. But Young-bun hid her expression and worked silently. "Mom, please, just this once." Dawoon pleaded again. Young-bun didn't stop her knife work. As she removed the guts from the hair tail, she said quietly, "You used to beg for grilled hair tail when you were 5. You asked for it in your lunchbox every morning. You said you liked this smell back then." Dawoon bit his lip. Memories of his childhood seemed to flash by. "I didn't know any better back then." "Right. Now you know how dirty and lowly this smell is." Young-bun's voice held a bitter laugh. Dawoon clenched his fists tightly, so hard his nails dug into his palms. At lunchtime, Mari came with kimbap. Sensing the tension between Dawoon and Young-bun, she cautiously asked, "Dawoon's here. Have you eaten?" Dawoon shook his head and stood up. "I'm going, Aunt." After Dawoon left, Mari sat next to Young-bun. Young-bun picked up a piece of kimbap, but it wouldn't go down her throat. Why not help him? He's your child. At Mari's words, Young-bun shook her head. "He's ashamed of my life. He thinks the work I've done my whole life is dirty." But he's still your son." Tears welled in Youngbun's eyes. It was true. No matter how hurt she was, Dawoon was her son, the child she bore in pain and raised, feeding him spoonful by spoonful. In the afternoon, Youngbun went to the storeroom behind the market. She took the rusty key from her pocket. Opening the storeroom door, the smell of dust stung her nose. An old safe in the corner came into view. Turning the key, the safe opened with a stiff sound. Inside were several passbooks and a bundle of documents. Youngbun opened the passbooks one by one. It was the money she had saved over 40 years, but a faded photograph fell from between the passbooks. It was a picture of a young Dawoon holding Youngbun's hand and smiling. It was taken in front of the market shop. Dawoon was tightly holding Youngbun's apron. Youngbun stared at the photo for a long time. Back then, Dawoon didn't dislike his mother's fishy smell. On the contrary, he said he liked that smell because it was his mom's smell, torn between a mother's love and the pain of rejection. Youngbun faces an impossible choice. But a desperate late-night phone call from her son forces her hand. What devastating news does he deliver that pushes her towards a final, heartbreaking decision?